Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Tracy Pirelli, the Intern Program Manager here at City Team. Today we're going to do an overview of the intern program for all of those who are involved in the program, whether you are an intern supervisor, a staff member interested in having an intern, or you just want to learn more information about our program. We're going to present that to you today. So let's talk about the purpose of the intern program. The purpose of our program is fourfold. We intend to build into our interns the ability to make disciples. We also have a focus of leadership development that is covered in the training that you'll hear a little bit more of later. It's also job training for our interns. Our hope is that they will gain skills that will allow them to be better fit to apply for jobs after they have been interns with us. And then for our City Team graduates specifically, it's a great transition program for them. Really builds a bridge for them to leave the City Team nest and then make their way back to society. Let's talk kind of about cycle dates and timing. Currently we have two cycles. We have our spring cycle that normally begins April 1st and it goes all the way through March 31st of the following year. So it is a year-long internship. And then our fall cycle begins October 1st and it goes through September 30th of the following year. Currently, our cycles are aligned with our City Team graduations. We may be looking at making some changes so we can make it more aligned to college quarters and semesters so we can gain more college students as interns. But for now, that's what they are. What are our service times? Currently, as I mentioned, the intern program is 1 year long, but our interns will have the opportunity to serve 2 years, even up to 3 years if approved by their supervisor and by their program manager. We are looking for an opportunity to really build and develop leaders and even managers out of our intern program. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that as we move on some of the qualifications. That third-year internship will only be granted to people who have had exceptional performance in their first and second year. They will have to have a written letter from their city director, their intern supervisor, as well as their program manager. And we want to make sure that that third-year internship will serve their purpose more than it'll serve ours. So if it's something that is in line with their career or where they're headed in terms of their future and building their goals, then we probably would lean more towards it. What we don't want to do is create an atmosphere where interns can just come and kind of stay in the City Team bubble, but we want to challenge them to be able to reach out and to be able to grow, and hopefully the intern program will help them do that if they decide to stay for the 3 years. In order for them to apply for a second or third year, they have to have consistent employment or matriculation throughout their internship. They have to be effectively working their exit or their emancipation plan. This really applies more to our graduate interns. And basically what that means is that they're still attending their meetings, they're meeting with their sponsor, they are involved in a biblical disciple-making fellowship, and it can either sponsor someone or be sponsored by someone else. So those are the things that we're looking for: a God-honoring lifestyle, a proven work ethic that we can depend on them. We've been able to depend on them as interns. Attending and engaged in our weekly intern training classes that are held here at corporate, or for our sites that are in Portland, Chester, we do a Skype training with them every week. Demonstrated leadership skills, and then secured off-site housing. So I'll mention that since I brought it up. Once our interns have been with us for a year, after that first year they are required to get housing off-site. And we do that to help them kind of again break away from that City Team bubble and become more ready to make the transition into society. Now let's talk about timelines. In spring, our spring cycle, as I mentioned before, it begins in April, but the process is this, and I want you to be aware of that. January is when you kind of start your recruiting process. Begin at that point to identify people who you think would be good serving as your intern. That's the time you start talking to them, seeing if they're interested. Do they meet the qualifications? In February, our applications and our reference forms, they go out to our candidates. In March is when we do our interviews and we do our selection process and placement. And then in April, at the beginning of the month, we're ready to start. The same thing applies for our fall cycle. Same idea. July is our recruitment month. August, applications and references are due. September, interviews, selection, and placement. And then October 1st, that fall cycle begins. The recruitment, what does it look like? We try to visit each site, or at least have it announced at every site that the intern program is coming up. Most sites usually know when it's happening because of the current interns that are serving. We identify potential candidates, make sure they receive their application and their reference forms, and make sure they understand all the requirements of the program. Applications and references will be turned in on the day that's normally specified. I'll send out an email to everyone and say, this is the deadline for our application and our references. And for our City Team graduates, additionally to their application and their reference, they do have to do what we call a success and sobriety form. Or it can be, if they're recent graduates, they can use their exit plan. If if they've graduated within the last 6 months, there's a success and sobriety plan that we have them complete that basically lists who their sponsors are, their sponsees, what meetings they're attending, and we allow our intern supervisors to use those forms to kind of keep our graduates accountable to what they should be doing towards their sobriety. We really do feel like it's not to our benefit if our interns are doing great work for us, but they're losing their sobriety or there's some sobriety risk that we're not aware of. So that form or those 2 documents helps us to keep them on track. Interview process. All departments interested in having an intern are encouraged and actually required to participate in the interview process. Normally for our Bay Area interns, the intern application and interview process happens here on site. And you can have a different representative from your department come and be a part of the interviews. It is a panel interview for our interns, so sometimes it can be kind of intimidating, but the reason we invite everyone to come in and to view those interns or to be a part of that process is a lot of times we're not quite sure where that intern would best fit. We think, because they've graduated, say for example, from House of Grace, then they should serve at House of Grace. But sometimes in the interview process, what we become aware of is that they have an awesome gift towards disciple making. So maybe instead of being a House of Grace intern, they would serve better being a DMM intern, or perhaps they have some great marketing background that we didn't know about. So it's important for marketing to have a representative at those interviews so they can say, hey, this person would really fit into what I'm doing. So that's why we invite all departments to participate in the interview process. For Chester and for Portland, our interview process is usually myself, the person who is requesting the intern, and whoever else the city director appoints to be a part of that interview process. Selection and placement. Upon completion of the interview process, the intern supervisors submit who they would like to serve in their area. Then I, in turn, will contact the candidates and tell them you have an offer to serve either at House of Grace or, say, for example, development. And then they have the opportunity to decide where they want to serve. So we don't place interns into an internship. We allow them to decide on where they have been, where there's interest or where they have been selected. We give them the opportunity to tell us where they would like to serve. Let's talk about eligibility. Who's eligible? City Team graduates, volunteers, past interns, college students. We've really opened up the door this time. We want to be able to expand our ability and our availability to other people who want to have the opportunity to come and do an internship with us. And for a long time, it has only been our City Team graduates, but now we have more options. The eligibility requirements for our graduates, they have to, of course, graduate from one of our programs. They have to be effectively working their emancipation or their exit plan, which we talked about earlier. Paid employment with a minimum of 20 hours per week and or enrolled in school with a minimum of 6 semester units. We have that in place because we want the internship to be something that is in parallel to something else that they're doing. So if they're pursuing their education, then the intern program is a part of that. Same thing for working. We don't want them to just do 20 hours of internship and that's it, because that's not a real life situation. Nobody can work 20 hours a week and succeed in life. You're going to be dependent on somebody else for something else. And so we're trying to develop in them a good work ethic where they're doing 20 hours of work somewhere else, 20 hours of internship, or if they're in school, the same idea. Volunteers, we want them to have an acceptable level of spiritual maturity. If they do have a recovery background, we do require that they have a minimum of 6 months sobriety, that they attend meetings, and that they have a sponsor, not a mentor, but a sponsor, or their sponsor and someone else, consistent and actively involved in a Bible, biblical disciple-making fellowship, and committed to the vision and the mission of City Team. Of course, for our volunteers, that only applies in terms of their recovery qualifications. That's only for men and women who come from recovery. For volunteers who do not, of course, that doesn't apply. If we have interns that were interns in the past and they decided that they want to come back and be interns again, same thing, acceptable level of spiritual maturity, minimum of 6 months sobriety, regularly meets with their sponsor, attends AA meetings, and involved in a Bible-based fellowship. They have to be working 20 hours a week or in school, and they had to have really had an above average experience if they were an intern before. We want to feel like we're bringing somebody back on who was successful in their first round of internship. We do ask for letters of recommendation from their previous intern supervisor, and from me, a recommendation from me, or a strong letter of recommendation from their sponsor. So say, for instance, someone didn't do so well their first round of internship. Things change, people change, life gets better, and we definitely want to apply grace in this area. So if they have a sponsor who's willing to say, hey, I think this person would be a great intern, then we're open to that. They do have to complete a success and sobriety plan, and they do have to maintain their housing off-site. So if we have someone who was an intern in the past, they don't currently live with us and they come back, they would not be allowed to move back into one of our sites for housing. They have to maintain the housing that they currently have. For training, we have a weekly training schedule. Normally for our Bay Area interns, it is here in our corporate office, and I normally do the training, and sometimes we'll bring in different staff people. In Chester and Portland, we do weekly training. Currently it's via Skype or GoToMeeting, so our interns are required to participate in that. The training is our way as an organization to give back to the interns. They are serving us, and yes, we give them a $500 a month stipend, but we want to have the ability to build into them and to really help them develop as leaders. And so a lot of our training is around leadership-based training, leadership development, disciple making, spiritual wellness, personal growth and development, leadership and management skills are the 4 areas that we're looking at for our training for our interns. One thing that is different from the past, we used to do recovery-based training or site-specific or job-specific training. So classes like big book reading or AA classes or case management, we don't do those classes anymore in our training. We allow the sites to do that training now, and that way we can focus the whole group on leadership development courses. What we were finding was if we had a class on urinalysis, or for a person who's doing an intern in the development department, it was not a good use of their time. And so we would have to separate the interns and do urinalysis with this group and do business etiquette with this group. But we want to keep the group together, so we thought it best to take this site-specific training and let the sites do their own training, their recovery training or DMM training, and we would keep our focus on leadership development. Intern supervisors commitment. So this portion of the video or training is really for my supervisors, those who have signed up and said, hey, I want to be a supervisor, I want to have an intern. What do we expect from you? First of all, a genuine interest in the life and the welfare of your intern. We don't want the intern program to be used for people to just have people that they can assign grunt work to. We want you to have a genuine interest in them. We want their experience to be a great experience, so when they leave the intern program, they can say it was worth it, I got something out of it, I learned, my supervisor was invested in me, not just the task I was doing, but in me as a person. Hands-on supervision and job training with your intern. We expect you to sit down and show them what their job is. Don't just throw them at an assignment and expect them to figure it out for themselves, but give them the training that they need. Attend an intern supervisor orientation, which this will suffice for that, as I'm giving you all the information now. Please adhere to the application and references deadline. We have found that sometimes people say, hey, I found an intern, can I throw them in the pot? And so we want you to adhere to the cycle dates and that process because it makes it easier for all of the departments, for the HR department, for the finance department. They know during a certain time of year they're going to get 30 or 40 applications that need to be processed, 30 or 40 new higher paperwork packets that have to be processed, and it just makes the process easier for us. So we do want you to apply to adhere to that. Again, we want you to attend the interview process, and I do sometimes call on my supervisors to help me with training. So we've asked all of the intern supervisors to be available for 2 to 4 trainings over the course of the year of the internship. You can sometimes pick your own topic as long as it's in line with what we have in mind for the overall curriculum, but if not, I do have curriculum available, and we've had supervisors do one or the other. So they may come and say, hey, I have a great training on finding your purpose in life, or they may say, I'd love to do a training on time management. Do you have something already? So we can work with you either way. We invite you to be a part of that. What else is expected from supervisors? Dedicated one-on-one weekly meetings. We have found that this is very beneficial to the interns, and we want you to take this time not to go over necessarily tasks and assignments as much as checking in with them and asking them, how are you doing? What's going on in your life? What we have found is that interns who relapse are very rarely having these one-on-one meetings with supervisors. And I've had people say, oh, we just meet together as a group, or, well, I see them all the time. We talk all the time. What we're asking you, and it is a requirement for supervisors to meet with their interns once a week in a one-on-one dedicated meeting for you to be able to check in with them and see how they're doing. You'll be surprised how much more people will give you and work harder with you when they know you're invested in them and not just what they're doing for you. I think I already mentioned this. Provide the intern training, the site-specific training. Give me a detailed job description of what you have for them in mind. Cooperation with the urinalysis is huge. So you'll receive an email from me throughout the year that says, please UA the interns. And so we usually ask that that happens within a 3-day period. Usually 72 hours is what we ask for. It's important that that's handled appropriately, so you don't want to tell the interns, hey, I'm going to interview and I'm going to UA you in 3 days. It should be random. It should be a surprise to them, so we can catch we can see what's really going on. It's a legitimate test. So your cooperation with that is very necessary. Again, this is for our recovery graduates only. Regular communication with me in terms of your intern school, work, lifestyle changes, whatever's going on. Let's talk about it. Call me, let me know what's happening so we can be aware of any potential problems or situations that may be coming up that we can deal with ahead of time before they actually happen. What's changed? What's different from the intern program the way it was before to where it is now? Basically, we've expanded who can be interns with us. It used to just be our graduates. Now it is volunteers. Past interns can come back, friends of City Team, college students. So in your recruiting, remember, you have a vast ability to look out beyond our graduates to have interns now. It used to be a 6-month internship. Now it's a 1-year internship, and 2 or 3 years service times are now available. The exit plan is a required part of the, okay, cut. Do it again. The exit plan is a required part of the application process for our recent graduates. That's new because before we never really, the intern supervisors, once they leave the recovery programs, we never really knew what is their plan. And in their exit plan, their goals for where they're going to live, where they want to work, their meetings with their sobriety teams or their counselors or their sponsors, all of that information is in their exit plan. And so we now have asked them to include that in the application process. And then the success and sobriety plan is a required part of the application for previous graduates and returning interns. So those things are different than before. Also, site-specific training that is now done at the sites. We don't do it here in our training sessions. Supervisors agree to teach 2 to 4 classes per year. Interns must secure off-site housing after 1 year of internship. Leadership development-based training versus specific recovery, DMM, or support services training. That's a different focus for us. Letters of recommendation are required for past interns, and supervisor-intern weekly meetings are governed by the intern's exit plan and/or sobriety plan for our recovery graduates. That is basically the overall process and the overall look at our intern program. We are very excited about what God is doing through the intern program. We've had a lot of success, and we are looking to expand it, looking for it to be better, more effective, really supporting the organization and supporting the staff as well. I want to thank you, those of you who already are intern supervisors. Thank you for your commitment to the program and working alongside of me. And I look forward to working with you in the future and look forward to making this program the best it can be. Thank you very much.